on iRadio.
The Joe Biden administration announced $95 million in new funding from the American people to the people of South Sudan. The funding was announced during a press conference at the World Food Program compound here in the capital, Juba. The money will support the response to the South Sudanese humanitarian emergency. Now, the American government is the major donor of the UN World Food Program, or WFP. Remember last week, WFP announced the reduction of food rations from about 700,000 refugees and internally displaced persons in the country due to funding gaps. Now, in a press statement seen by iRadio, the WFP said the rations will be reduced from this month. This is because the WFP resources in the country stretched thin at a time when levels of food insecurity are at their highest in a decade, and donors are grappling with the economic impact of the coronavirus. Now, in 2021 this year, food insecurity in South Sudan is alarming high. The latest integrated food security phase classification, known as IPC assessment, warned that 7.24 million people will face severe acute hunger at the height of the lean season in July, while 1.4 million children will be acutely malnourished. Now, vulnerable communities with severe food insecurity in places classified as by IPC levels require continued assistance to stop going even it might go up to May through September during the lean season. To shed more light on the humanitarian situation in the country and the role of the United States government, also to talk about the peace agreement, I'm now pleased to have the U.S. Embassy, the head of U.S. Embassy in the capital, Juba, Ambassador Larry Andre. Also joining me in the studio is the USAID Humanitarian Assistant Official, Alifia Merchant. It's good to have both of you in the studio. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes. Now, Ambassador, to begin with, you are welcome to iRadio in South Sudan. I understand you arrived in Juba last month. First of all, tell us, is it your first time in this country?
No, it is not. I had the great honor of being the deputy to the late Princeton Lyman, who was our special envoy at that time. And so with him, I traveled here between 2011, 2013. And also during that time, he sent me here to look after the embassy when the ambassador was gone. So I spent a lot of time here between those 2 years. And I was then sent back here at the beginning of 2014 during a very difficult period for the country, and stayed for the first 3 months of 2014. So I do have some familiarity with Juba and the country beyond Juba. I was able to travel to all parts of your country.
Yes, and maybe tell us, since you came here last month, what are your initial impressions?
Well, I've noticed that some of my favorite spots in Juba are still going well. Others are no longer functioning. It seems to me that there are more people in Juba than I remember. So I think this is probably conflict-driven, with people coming into the capital and not being able to do their farming. They're not able to proceed as they normally would in their homes outside the capital, and that is one reason we've seen agricultural production go down. People, because of insecurity, are forced to leave their homes, abandon their fields, and food production goes down in a country that has enormous agricultural potential.
Right. And let me come to you, Alifia. Yesterday, I understand during a press conference in Juba, about $95 million was actually delivered to the WFP, or announced by the U.S. government for humanitarian assistance in the country. First of all, can you give us more details about this announcement of the funding? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So of the $95 million that was announced yesterday, $43 million was actually coming from the Department of State for the UN High Commission for Refugees. And of course, that money will be used to support IDP and refugee populations in South Sudan, and also refugees from South Sudan that are outside of the country. The other $52 million is from the United States Agency for International Development, the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, which is where I work. And that money will be going, about $30 million will be going to the World Food Program. Obviously, the food assistance needs, food insecurity in this country is extremely high. It's the highest, as you mentioned, in 10 years, which is how long we've been keeping track. With an alarming situation in the area of Jonglei, that we are definitely wanting to assist. So of that funding, a lot of it's going to food assistance, nutrition assistance, essential healthcare services, shelter, safe drinking water, sanitation. All of those components are extremely important for improving nutrition outcomes.
Yes, and Ambassador Larry, I understand you had an opportunity to say something yesterday during the press conference. Can you share with us, what did you say?
Well, I wanted to explain the link between conflict and hunger. And with South Sudan experiencing the greatest degree of hunger since its existence as a nation. This is a young nation, 10 years, but all the indicators are this will be the most food insecure year on record. And I wanted to make sure people understand that much of this, not all of it, but much of this is driven by conflict. And so when you think of full implementation of the peace agreement, all of the advantages to South Sudanese that would be derived from that, reducing hunger is one of them. Of course, reducing violence is another. Being able to turn from humanitarian assistance to development is another. So that is when I was asked about the peace agreement yesterday, the journalist apologized, saying that he knows this is off topic. And my reply was, it's not off topic at all because of the link between conflict and hunger.
Yes. And what, Ambassador, when you say there is need to turn from humanitarian assistance to development, what do you mean here? What are you referring to?
Well, those are two aspects of assistance to address an immediate problem of South Sudanese who are in dire need of food and other assistance. That takes care of an immediate problem. And then development assistance, that is putting in place the structures that can lead the country to its destiny of prosperity, stability, peace, unity amongst all the different peoples who make up this nation. So those are the sorts of long-term projects that development assistance is all about, to where humanitarian assistance is taking care of an immediate, severe problem.
Right.
Yes.
You'd like to add something?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'd love to add to that, because even within the humanitarian assistance space, I think not only USAID as a donor, but all the donors here that we work with closely, we're all looking to build resilience for households with humanitarian assistance. Every year we see the needs going up, and that's not sustainable. Everybody wants the same thing, for the needs to go down and for us to be able to have households be resilient to the shocks that they face, flooding, drought, pests, etc. So the program that we're actually doing with some of the humanitarian assistance work is to build resilience for households to be able to farm, to take care of their livestock and animals, for all of those factors that go in, education, healthcare, all of those important things.
Right, thank you for that. Live in the studio by the head of U.S. Embassy in Juba, Ambassador Larry Andre, and also Alifia Merchant, the humanitarian assistant official of the USAID. Now, Ambassador, let me ask you this question, and maybe Alifia, you can also add more later on. Recently, humanitarian and aid workers have been the victims of armed attacks in the country, and there have been incidents of looting of humanitarian cargo, including food and nutrition supplies that were en route to the people in need of these items. Now, how is this impacting the distribution of assistance to people in need in South Sudan?
Well, to deliver aid, we need people and vehicles who can do so, and especially people who have years of experience, have expertise on the appropriate way of delivering aid, and the population that is receiving the aid are identified as the most vulnerable. So when robbers come and take the aid that is not intended for them, that is intended for South Sudanese citizens who have the greatest need, then they are robbing from people who are very hungry. And certainly when you're harming those who are engaged in delivering aid, then you are preventing that urgently needed food from getting to hungry South Sudanese. So it's quite a crime, and we turn to the government of South Sudan at every level to assist in expediting that aid, and that includes the security aspect.
Right, Olivia, you can add something.
Sure, thanks. We say that South Sudan is one of the most dangerous places to be a humanitarian assistance worker, and that's unfortunate because I think the possibilities, as Ambassador Andre has mentioned, are enormous in this country. So we do request, as a donor, that our partners are able to do the work that they need to do on the ground in a safe and secure way. In terms of the food and the looting of items, I think that one thing that strikes me is that the situation, it seems like it's getting, there's been an increase in the number of looting incidents, and that's an indication of how bad I think the situation is for certain people in those communities, that they feel that their only option is to steal this food, which should be getting to the people that are most in need. But I think that it's alarming that we're seeing such an increase in that, and in states like Warrap, where we have some of the highest food insecurity, we have been having great difficulty. WFP has been having great difficulty in getting food out there.
Right, and now talking about the issue of insecurity, looting, because it's connected to this humanitarian situation in the country. Ambassador, let me come to you. What should the government of South Sudan then be doing to protect humanitarian workers and also ensure that humanitarian organizations have access to the people they are trying to help?
Well, the main request I have for our government partners, government of South Sudan, at every level, is to think in terms of expediting the aid. Help us work together with us to get the aid to hungry South Sudanese as quickly as possible, in as secure a way as possible. So it can only work if there is collaboration, partnership between the government of South Sudan at every level and the foreign humanitarians who are delivering the aid.
Right. Now, let's talk about the issue of the peace agreement implementation, one of which is one of the key issues of the day here. So, Ambassador, how would you say the peace agreement implementation relates to the current humanitarian situation in the country?
There has been a rise in conflict. It is not the same conflict that tore the nation apart at the end of 13 and 14, and then came back in 16. It's not two large organized forces confronting each other. It is many small conflicts throughout the country, some of which, frankly, are aspects of traditional conflicts, but are now carried out by extremely well-armed young men. In other instances, it's clear that there is political manipulation, political mobilization that is generating these small local conflicts for the political gain of certain individuals. So this causes hunger. When people have to flee their farms, they're no longer producing food for themselves. They're not producing food for the markets, and the agricultural production in this country goes down. And that so the full implementation of the peace agreement can have direct positive effects on South Sudanese citizens. Some of the I congratulate the political leadership in that some aspects of the peace agreement have been implemented, but there is much left to be done, And much of what is left to be done is completely within the power of South Sudanese leadership. It takes political will. It doesn't take resources. Some other aspects take resources. So to attract more resources, you just have to show absolute, genuine sincerity in fulfilling the terms of the peace agreement, and that can be achieved by implementing everything that can possibly be implemented. And since so much of it does not require any resources from your foreign friends.
Yes, and you earlier mentioned something. You said political mobilization, which maybe can be fueling the conflict. And then you mentioned something. You said much need to be done. What are you referring to here? I mean, you're talking about the provisions of the agreement, like the key provisions they need to implement.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's some positive word yesterday of a government's intention to set up the legislature. I was happy to hear that, and now I want to all of the friends of South Sudan anticipate that those words will be acted on. And you'll have a key branch of government, so that every South Sudanese feels that they have a voice and representation at the national level as well as at the state and county levels. So that encourages peace. So that is one example. Of course, there's other parts of the peace agreement that are as yet unimplemented. But that is one that comes to mind, and it's good news because I did hear from government yesterday an intent to act on that one.
Right, and before we come to the ambassador to wind up, I give you your last chance for a message that you would like to get to the people of South Sudan through iRadio today, Alifia.
Definitely focusing on building the safety and security for the population so that they can look to the future. I mean, one thing I've loved being here in South Sudan is the family structure. I mean, people here, their children are their future, and I really want the best for the people of South Sudan and for them to be able to build that positive future once they have a safe and secure environment to return to.
All right, thank you for that. Ambassador, share with us your final message to the people of South Sudan, please.
I urge South Sudanese to recapture the spirit of 2011. I was here at that very hopeful time. When I returned, one of the first things I asked my colleagues, the first weekend I was here, I want to get in the car. Let's drive to Nimule. We can stop along the way. Wow. That is the road the U.S. government built, and it was and the South Sudanese government was to maintain. I have wonderful memories of that, and we would stop at the villages along the way. There would be tables set up on the road. You can buy fruits and vegetables. And my colleague said, "No, no, 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 no. You're not going to go on that road." Right now. So let's get back to 2011, the spirit of a united people who are going forward as one to achieve prosperity and development, education for their children, good health. All of that is within the country's grasp. Your resource base, never mind oil, your resource base is very strong, very rich. And this should be a country that not only feeds itself, it can feed the region, can feed beyond the region. Enormous agricultural potential.
Right.